The morning I want you to see first is a good one. It is July. The sun is already warm on the porch boards. There is coffee going cold in my hand because I keep forgetting to drink it, and I keep forgetting because a 4-year-old named Ren is trying to teach my old dog to sit, and the dog is losing on purpose. Up the drive comes a gray truck, my brother Leon, with a thermos and a bag of peaches. He lifts 2 fingers off the wheel, the way our father used to. The garden is back in. The well is cold and sweet again. The house behind me smells like bread. It took burying my mother and almost losing my brother for this porch to feel like mine. But I am getting ahead of myself. I am Virgil Renfro, 66 years old, retired. I drilled water wells in Cane Hollow, Arkansas for 41 years, and most of the county still calls me the slow one. They do not mean it cruel, most of them. It is just the name I was handed at about 5 years old, and it stuck the way a name will when nobody bothers to check it. Slow to read, slow to talk, slow to answer because I like to be sure before I open my mouth. I wore that name for 61 years before it did me any harm worth telling about. Then my mother died, and it nearly cost me everything she left behind. Let me start where a slow man starts. At the beginning. I grew up 2 miles from where I sit now, in a white house on 40 acres, the youngest of 3. My sister Rhonda came first in 1956, then me, then my brother Leon, 2 years behind. My father Odell dug that well himself with a borrowed rig in 1960. My mother Alma planted the garden the same spring. They raised us on water and greens and not much money, and they were not soft people, but they were fair ones. I left school at 15. I was not learning to read the way the other children read, and a rig came up needing a hand who did not mind the cold and the mud, and I did not mind either. I sent most of my pay home. Nobody thanked me for it. Nobody had to. That was just what you did. Slow to read is not slow to see. I found that out on the rigs. A well is a puzzle you solve in the dark, 40 feet down, by feel and by patience. You cannot rush water. You listen to the ground, and the ground tells you the truth if you are quiet enough to hear it. I got good at being quiet enough to hear it. There was a well I drilled in 1988 out on the old Harmon place that 3 other outfits had walked away from. A dry hole, they told the owner. Bad ground. He called me because I was cheap and because he was out of better ideas. I did not drill where the others drilled. I walked the land 2 days first in the cold and watched where the frost melted first in the mornings and where the cattle stood and where a certain kind of weed grew that likes its feet wet. On the 3rd day, I set the rig on a spot that looked like nothing at all. At 90 feet, we hit water so clean you could have bottled it. The owner asked me how I knew. I told him the truth. I did not know. I listened, and the ground told me. He looked at me like I had done a card trick. I had just been paying attention. That is all being quiet ever was. Paying attention while everybody else talked. That was the work of my life. Half the wells in this county are mine. I never put my name on any of them. A well does not need a name. It just needs to give water year after year, whether anybody thanks it or not. I understood that kind of thing early. Maybe I understood it because I was one. I married Nell in 1984. She was a school teacher, and she never once treated me like the slow one. She used to say I read people the way she read books. She died in the spring of 2019, and I still keep her chair by the front window because that is where the good light is, and she liked the good light. We never had children. So the family I had left was the one I was born into. My mother up the road, my sister who had opinions about me, and my brother who I believed had walked off and left us all a long time before. I will get to how wrong I was about that. For most of my life, the small cuts came steady and quiet, the way water finds a low spot. I was 7 the first time I remember it landing. A teacher had sent a note home. My mother read it at the table, and my father read it, and Rhonda, who was 11 and already sharp, read it over their shoulders and laughed. "He will never amount to a thing," she said. "Slow as cold molasses." Nobody corrected her. That is the part that teaches a child. Not the cruelty, the silence around it. It went on like that, gentle and constant, for 60 years. At holidays, Rhonda seated me at the end of the table near the kitchen so I could carry things. She finished my sentences before I got to the end of them. When someone asked what I did for a living, she answered for me. "Virgil digs holes," she would say. It is honest work. Then she would smile the smile that made it not a compliment. I never argued. I had a rig to run and a wife who saw me clear, and I did not need my sister to hand me my worth. So I let her keep her picture of me. It cost me nothing I could not spare. I will give you one so you can see the shape of it. Thanksgiving, 2 years back. The whole family at Rhonda's long table, the good china out, Dwayne carving like a man on television. I had spent that morning fixing the pump on Rhonda's well, the one I drilled for her at cost in 1996, because it had gone to knocking and she called me at 7 to come see to it before her guests arrived. I saw to it. I did not send a bill. I never had. At the table, a neighbor of hers asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Rhonda did. Virgil digs holes, she said. It is honest work. Then the smile. He fixed my water this very morning, bless him. He is handy that way, not much for conversation, but handy. The neighbor laughed kind enough and moved on to the football. I passed the potatoes. I did not say that the well he was drinking from at that table was one I put in the ground. I did not say that the hands she called handy had built the water she lived on. I ate my dinner. I helped clear the plates because I was near the kitchen, because that is where she always sat me. Later, Junie found me on the back step. She was younger then and quiet like me, and she sat down beside me and said, "You do not have to take that, Uncle Virgil." I told her what I believed at the time. "It does not cost me anything," I said. She looked at me with her grandmother's eyes. "It costs you something," she said. "You just decided a long time ago not to count it." She was right. She was more right than I let myself know. But I had run wells my whole life by not counting the small hurts, by keeping my eyes on the water and not the mud, and I was too old and too set to learn a new way to stand at a table. So I kept taking it, and they kept giving it, and none of us knew that under all of it sat a deed with my name on it, patient as bedrock. Here's the thing I got wrong, and I want to say it plain because it is the part I am least proud of. I believe my brother Leon was cut from Rhonda's cloth. When our father got sick in 2013, Leon was working oil work out of state, 3 time zones away, hard to reach. He did not come home much. He did not call much. The bills piled up and the taxes went unpaid, and I never once saw Leon's truck in the drive. So I filed him where the family had filed me. I wrote my own brother off with the same pencil they used on me. I decided he had left us, and I stopped calling him. And for 10 years, the silence between us was a thing I told myself he had built. I would come to learn I had built half of it, but I did not know that yet. In 2013, all I knew was that my father was dying and the home place was slipping away, and nobody with money was stepping up. Nobody they could see anyway. My father passed in the autumn of 2014. Before he did, the 40 acres and the White House went to the county tax sale. That is a plain fact that sounds like a tragedy, and it nearly was. The taxes had gone 3 years unpaid. The notice came in the mail with a date on it, and past that date the place would be auctioned on the courthouse steps to whoever had the cash. Rhonda and Dwayne were stretched, she said. Leon was a ghost, I thought. My mother did not even understand the letter. She just held it and looked at me, the way she looked at me when she needed the quiet son to fix a quiet thing. So I fixed it. Quiet. I went to see my father in the hospital the night before the sale. He was mostly gone by then, in and out, his hands picking at the blanket the way dying men's hands do. He knew me in a clear moment. He said, "The place." Just that. The place. 40 acres and a White House and a well he dug with his own arms in 1960. I leaned down close so he could hear me. "I have got it, Daddy," I said. "Do not you worry about the place. I have got it." He looked at me a long moment, and I do not know how much of it he understood, but something in his face let go, and he slept. He passed 9 days later. I never told him how I got it, because there was nothing to tell yet, and because a man like my father did not need the how. He needed the that. He needed to know the quiet son had it handled. I have had it handled ever since. I had money. That is the part nobody knew. 41 years of well work, lived small, spent slow, banked steady. A man who drives the same truck for 20 years and eats at home has more than people think. The slow one had been careful, and careful adds up. I went to the courthouse the morning of the sale. I bought the certificate on the family place myself. I paid the back taxes and the penalty in a cashier's check. And a year later, when the redemption time ran out and nobody redeemed it, the county gave me the collector's deed. My name. Recorded downtown in the big book with a stamp. I did not tell my sister. I did not tell my brother. I told my mother once at her kitchen table, and I told her only because it was her home, and she had a right to know she would never lose it. She cried. Then she took my hand and said, "You did right, Virgil." And then she asked me for one thing. "Do not let this turn into a fight between you children. Keep it quiet while I am living. Let me have my house and my pride, and when I am gone, you settle it kind." I promised her. I am a man who keeps a promise. So for 11 years, my mother lived in that house rent-free, and every autumn I paid the taxes on it, and every autumn I put the receipt in the dented recipe tin she kept on the counter, because that seemed like the right place for a family's papers to live. Nobody asked, so nobody knew, and the years went by. My mother died in February of 2026. She was 89. She went in her sleep with the garden under snow, and I was the one who found her, because I was the one who came by every Sunday. The funeral was small and cold and decent. Rhonda cried the loudest, which is a thing I have noticed about people who want to be seen grieving. Leon came home for it. We shook hands like two men who did not know how to be brothers anymore. I thought that was his fault. I know better now. The church was half full of people my mother had fed over the years. The preacher said she was a woman who gave without being asked, and he did not know how right he was, and I did not tell him. Rhonda gave a eulogy about a mother I did not quite recognize, all soft focus and store-bought, and she cried in the front pew where the light was good. Leon sat in the back. I sat in the middle, which is where I have sat my whole life, and I watched my family the way I watched the ground, and I saw more than I wanted to. I saw Rhonda already looking at the house through the church windows like a thing to be appraised. I saw Dwayne checking his phone in his lap. I saw Leon's shoulders set hard, a man holding something in. I did not know what he was holding then. I thought it was distance. It was grief and guilt, and 6 years of quiet wires he never once mentioned. After the burial, everyone came back to the home place for coffee and ham, and that is where I heard the plan. I was in the pantry off the kitchen looking for a jar of my mother's beans to send home with a neighbor who brought the ham. The screen door was open to the porch, and my sister's voice carries. It always has. "We will get it listed by spring," Rhonda said. "Split 3 ways, clean." Dwayne, her husband, said, "What about Virgil?" "What about him?" Rhonda said. "He will sign whatever the lawyer puts in front of him. He always has. He does not know the difference. He never has." I stood very still in the pantry with a jar of beans in my hand. Silence. Not the room. The room was full of talk. The silence was in me. It was the sound a man makes inside when the last benefit of the doubt goes out of him. They were dividing a house that had not been theirs to divide for 11 years. They were going to sell my mother's home out from under her wish, and they were counting on the slow one to hold the pen and not read the paper. I want to be fair, even now. I do not think Rhonda woke up that morning meaning to rob anybody. That is not how it works mostly. She had told herself a story about me for 60 years, and the story was convenient, and she had never once had a reason to check it. In her story, I was the brother who could not manage his own affairs, so of course she would have to manage this one for me. People do a great deal of harm inside stories they find comfortable. I had done some of it myself about Leon. I knew the shape of it from the inside. I put the beans back. I dried my hands on the dish towel. I did not say a word. Not yet. That night I sat with the tin, 11 years of tax receipts, folded soft, and under them a sealed envelope in my mother's hand with my name on it, that I had not known she had put there. I did not open it. Some letters you read at the right time and not before. I went to see Otis Keene the next morning. Otis and I drilled together for 30 years. He is the only man alive who has seen me lose my temper, once, in 1991, over a stuck bit, and he has never let me forget it. I told him everything. The sale in 2014, the deed, my mother's promise, the plan on the porch. Otis listened the way old partners listen, which is without interrupting and without pretending to be surprised. When I finished, he said, "You could stop this today, Virgil. One phone call. You own the ground they are standing on." "I could," I said, "but you are not going to." "I would rather Mama's wish did it than my temper," I said. "She asked me to keep it quiet and settle it kind. Loud is not kind." Otis poured more coffee. He thought a while, the way you think when you have known a man 40 years, and you are trying to talk him into the smart thing without insulting him. "Then let the facts do the work," he said. "Do not fight her. Just be in the room when the paper gets read, and let the paper say what you are too decent to say." We sat with that a while. Otis turned his coffee cup around in his hands. "You know what she is going to say when it comes out," he said. "She is going to say you tricked her. She is going to make herself the one who got done wrong." "I know it," I said, "and you are going to let her." "I am going to let the paper answer her," I said. "The paper does not get angry. It just says the date and the amount. A man cannot argue his way around a date and an amount." Otis nodded, slow. "40 years I watched you find water where smarter men swore there was none," he said. "I never once saw you brag on it. I do not know how you do it, Virgil." "You just described how," I said. That was good counsel. It was also exactly what my mother had asked for. Read it out loud, not handed over quiet. That night I sat in Nell's chair by the good window. I could almost hear her. "She used to say that pride and mercy cannot ride in the same wagon, so you had better decide early which one is driving." I decided. I did not want to win against my sister. A man does not win against his sister. There is no such thing. I wanted my mother's last wish to stand, and I wanted to be able to look at myself after. A quiet man with the deed in his name does not need to raise his voice. He just needs to show up. There was a lawyer to see first. My mother's estate, small as it was, still had to go through the court, and she had named an attorney to read her will. Francis Dillard, an old hand, 60-some years old, who had practiced in that county long enough to have recorded half its deeds, including mine. I went to her office on a Tuesday. She had the folder ready before I sat down, because she was the one who had drawn the collector's deed for me in 2015, and she had kept it all these years the way careful lawyers keep things. There it was, the deed with my name on it, 11 years of tax receipts, the same ones from the tin, because I had brought her copies each year, slow and steady. And my mother's letter, the twin of the one in the tin, naming me the executor of her estate and asking me, in writing, to keep the land in the family. "Your mother came to see me in the fall," Francis said. She wanted this read out loud at the table, not handed over after. She was very clear. She said the family needed to hear it from the paper, not from you, because they would not believe it from you. That last part stung, because it was true. They would not have believed me. The slow one, claiming he owned the house. They would have laughed. "Read it out loud," I said. "That is what she wanted. That is what we will do." Francis looked at me a moment. "You have been carrying this 11 years by yourself." "It was not heavy," I said. "It was just quiet." Francis slid a second paper across. My mother had made me executor of what little estate there was. A checking account, a small certificate at the bank, a burial policy already spent on the burial. Not much, but my mother had thought it through the way she thought everything through, which was more careful than any of us ever gave her credit for. She had wanted the land settled by deed, clean and outside the estate, so that no court and no sibling could reach it. And she had wanted the money settled fair inside the estate, so that no one could ever say she left them nothing. She was not a slow woman either, Francis said. People underestimated her too. I think that is part of why she trusted you with this. I had not thought of it that way. My mother and I had that much in common then. We had both spent our lives being counted low by people who never bothered to check the arithmetic. While I was making it quiet and lawful, my sister was making it loud. That same week, A realtor was walking my mother's fence line with Rhonda and Dwayne, pacing off the road frontage, talking about where the sign would go. I drove past on the county road and saw them out there in the cold grass, pointing at my father's well like it was a selling point. I did not stop. I did not roll down the window. I brought paper to a fight I never wanted, and I let the realtor pace. Evidence is not a scheme. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. A scheme hides. Evidence just waits. I drove on home and paid that year's taxes right on time and put the receipt in the tin. The will reading was set for the second week of March in Francis Dillard's conference room downtown. A long table, good chairs, a window that looked out on the courthouse where I had bought the place 12 years before. We came in one at a time. Rhonda and Dwayne, dressed for a closing more than a reading. Leon in a clean shirt, quiet, sitting on my side of the table without either of us deciding it. And me, in my Sunday collar, with nothing in my hands. Frances took her seat at the head. She set out the folder. And before she could speak, Rhonda took over the room the way she always did. She waved a hand at me, loose like brushing off a fly. She said it to Frances, but she said it loud enough for the window. "Don't mind him," Rhonda said. "He's the slow one, been broke his whole life. Just tell him where to sign, and we can all get on with it." Dwayne chuckled. Leon went still beside me. Frances Dillard did not chuckle. She looked up from her folder. Slow. She looked at Rhonda for a long moment, and then she looked at me, and I watched her place my face against a name she had known for 11 years. She set down her pen. "You don't know who he is," she said. It was not a question exactly. It landed in the room like a stone in a still pond. Rhonda blinked. "He's my brother. He digs wells." "He is the owner of record of the property in this estate," Frances said. "Has been since 2015. I recorded the deed myself." Silence. This time it was the room. The whole room. Dwayne's chuckle died in his throat. Rhonda's mouth opened and did not find anything to put in it. Frances opened the folder and read it out, plain, the way my mother had asked. The house and the 40 acres were not in the estate. They could not be sold 3 ways, because they were not the estate's to sell. They had belonged to Virgil Renfro since the autumn of 2014, bought at the county tax sale when the place was 3 years delinquent and nobody in the family stepped forward. She read the dates. She read the amounts. She laid out 11 years of tax receipts in a fan on the table, and every one of them had my name on it. Rhonda reached out and turned one of the receipts around, as if the words would read different upside down to her than they did to me. County of record. My name. The year. A little stamp. She set it down like it had burned her. "This is a mistake," she said. "Some kind of clerk's mistake." "It is not a mistake," Frances said, not unkind. "I filed it. I have filed 1,000 of them. This one I remember because the man who bought it asked me to keep it quiet, and in 30 years, he is the only one who ever asked me that." Dwayne had gone a color I had not seen on him before. He was doing arithmetic in his head, and the arithmetic was not coming out the way he had chalked it on the porch. Then she read my mother's letter. I will not give you all of it. Some of it was between a mother and her children, but she wrote that the quiet son had saved the home the loud family was about to lose, and that he had done it without a word, and asked for nothing, and paid the taxes every year while they all assumed he could not count. She wrote that she was leaving the small money in her accounts to be split fair among the 3 of us. And she wrote that the land was already given, 11 years ago, to the child who kept it, and she asked that it stay in the family. And she asked us to be kind to each other, because she would be watching and she would be disappointed if we were not. When Frances finished, nobody spoke. Then Rhonda found her voice, and it came out thin. "That is not possible. He does not have that kind of money. He digs holes." And that is when my brother Leon stood up. I had not expected it. I had spent 10 years sure that Leon had left us, that he was one of them, that when the paper came out he would side with Rhonda and want his cut. I had him filed wrong, the exact way they had me filed wrong, and I did not even see the shape of my own mistake until he opened his mouth. He never dug holes, Leon said, and his voice was rough. He built water. Half this county drinks because of him. He looked at Rhonda. And you knew that. You just liked the other story better. Then he said the thing that turned the room, and turned me. You want to know where Mama's grocery money came from these last 6 years, Rhonda? After her pension got thin? It came from me, wired every month, quiet so she would not fuss. I could not be here, so I sent what I could. He looked at me then, straight at me, and something in his face cracked. And I always figured Virgil was doing the same in his own way. Because that is who he is. That is who he always was. I just did not know it was the whole house. I sat there and felt 10 years fold up wrong inside me. He had been carrying his corner the entire time. Not close by, not loud, not where I could see it, but carrying it. And I had written him off with the family pencil, and I had called it his fault, and it had been at least half mine. No shouting, no triumph. Just a room learning what patience had been holding up, and one man learning he had misjudged his own brother for a decade. It took the wind out of the whole business. Rhonda did not collapse the way the villains do in stories. Real people do not. She sat there and worked her jaw and went from angry to cornered to something smaller and more honest for about 3 seconds. I did not know, she said finally. That was it. That was as close to sorry as she was going to get, and I had known her 66 years, so I recognized it for what it was. Not an apology, a door opening an inch, then thinking better of it. Dwayne started to half rise like he might argue the paper, and then he read the room and the receipts and the deed, and he sat back down. He never touched anything. There was nothing to touch. The paper had already done the taking, which meant the only thing left for me to do was the part I wanted. I have thought a good deal about the difference between justice and revenge. They use a lot of the same tools. The line between them is what you do once you are holding the deed. Revenge would have sold the place out from under Rhonda the way she meant to sell it out from under Mama. I did not want that. I never had. My mother taught me that, though she never said it in those words. She fed people who never thanked her. She gave without being asked and without keeping a ledger. And when she did keep a ledger, like the tin of receipts, she kept it not to collect, but to remember. I had her tin. I had her deed. I had her letter. What I did not have was any reason to become in one afternoon the small thing my sister already believed I was too slow to be. I could afford a great many things by then. I could not afford that. I looked at my sister across my mother's estate, and I kept my voice level. You can have your share, Rhonda, I said. The account's split 3 ways, just like Mama wrote. I will not touch a penny of it, and I will forgive the taxes and whatever was owed before, all of it, and never bring it up again. Her chin came up, ready to be told what she was not getting. But you cannot have the house, I said. Mama already gave it away, 11 years ago, to the one who kept it. That was her choice, not mine, and I intend to honor it. Rhonda looked like she wanted to fight and found there was nothing to fight. You cannot argue with a recorded deed and a dead woman's letter. You can only decide how you are going to carry the loss. She decided to carry it cold. She gathered her purse and she stood. Dwayne stood with her. And then a chair moved on the far end of the table, and my niece Junie, Rhonda's own daughter, 29 years old and holding a sleeping 4-year-old against her shoulder, got up and came around to my side and put her free hand on my arm. Grandma was right about you, Uncle Virgil, Junie said, quiet. She always said you were the smart one. She just made us promise not to tell you she said it. I have not cried much in my life. My eyes are old and dry, but they were not dry then. Rhonda saw her daughter cross the room to me, and something in her face wanted to break and did not. She turned and walked out. Dwayne followed. The door closed soft, on its own weight. The paper did the taking. I got to do the forgiving. That was the only part I ever wanted, and I got to keep it. I set the door where it belonged, kind and closed, and not locked. The spring came on the way it does in the Ozarks, all at once, like the hills could not hold it in any longer. I moved into the home place in April. It felt strange for about a week, and then it felt like the only place I had ever belonged. I brought Nell's chair and set it by the front window, in the good light, next to the window my mother used to sit at. 2 women who never got to be old in that house, keeping the light company. I put the recipe tin on the counter where it had always been. Leon started coming by on Saturdays. The first few times we did not know what to say, so we worked instead. We re-shocked the old well and cleared the garden and mended the fence Dwayne's realtor had leaned on. Somewhere in the sawdust and the well water, 10 years of wrong quiet turned into the good kind. We are brothers again. It is late, and it is not the same as if I had not thrown away the decade, but it is real, and I am grateful, and I have stopped counting what it cost. There is a picture in my head I hold on to from June. Leon on one end of a sawhorse and me on the other, cutting new porch boards. Junie in my mother's old apron, which fit her like it was made for her. And Wren at the pump, working the handle with both hands and all her weight, shrieking every time the water came, like the ground was doing it just for her. 4 people on 40 acres that a piece of paper says are mine. It does not feel like mine. It feels like ours. That is the only way land is ever worth having. Junie brings Wren out most weekends. Wren thinks the pump is magic. You work the handle and cold water comes up out of the ground on a hot day. And to a 4-year-old, that is a miracle. And I have decided she is right and everyone else is wrong. I am teaching her to work the handle. She is quick. Nobody will ever call her slow. But if they do, she will know what I did not know for 60 years, that it is just a name, and names can be wrong. Rhonda took her third of the accounts. She sent a letter in May. It was 3 pages, and most of it was about how the whole thing had been handled to embarrass her, and how Mama had played favorites, and how none of it was fair. There was one line near the end that came close to reaching, and then pulled back. I answered with 2 lines. I told her the door was not locked, and that when she wanted to come sit on the porch, she would find the coffee on. I meant it. I still do. I did not get my sister back, and I have stopped waiting for the apology that is not coming, and there is a peace in stopping. The peace does not come from her. It never was going to. It comes from the smaller family that showed up. The brother, the niece, the little girl at the pump. There were harder days in there too. I do not want to make it sound like the spring fixed everything, because grief does not work on a schedule, and neither does forgiveness. There were mornings I walked out to my father's well and stood there and missed my mother so bad I could not get the coffee down. There were nights I sat in Nell's chair and wished I could tell her how it all came out and had to settle for telling the window. And there was the matter of the 10 years I threw away with Leon. You do not get those back. We talk about it some. One Saturday, mending the garden fence, he stopped and said, I should have called. I told myself you had it handled, and I let that be my excuse to stay gone. And I told him the truth, which was harder to say than any deed I ever recorded. I should have called too. I decided you left because deciding was easier than dialing. We did not hug. We are not those kind of men. We just kept mending the fence, and the fence got mended, and something else got mended too. Junie comes with a key now. She does not knock. That was my idea. I told her this house was low on people who belonged in it without knocking, and she qualified. Wren has a drawer of her own with crayons in it. The recipe tin has started collecting new receipts on top of the old ones, and grocery lists in Junie's hand, and a drawing of the pump that Wren made, which is just a blue scribble and a stick of brown, and which I would not trade for the deed. That is where I will leave it on this good July morning, with Leon coming up the drive and Wren losing a battle of wills to a lazy dog and the bread going in the kitchen. If you have ever been the quiet one at your own family's table, the one they decided was less, the one they talked past and around and over, then I want you to hear this from a man who wore that name 66 years. Slow to speak was never the same as slow to know, and the ones who love you quiet are often the ones carrying the most, one corner at a time, where you cannot see. If this story meant something to you tonight, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and tell me in the comments about the person in your life the world decided to underestimate. I would like to know their name. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, no matter how long you have gone unseen, it is never too late for the quiet ones to be known, and never too late to choose patience over pride, mercy over being right, and the family that shows up over the one that only ever talked. The end.